everybody, I'm Pia from Stitches and Scraps. Today I'm going to show you how to do the sleeve for the Simply Sweet Raglan baby sweater. I'm using my larger needles and I've put them on a 30-inch cord, which should be big enough to magic loop for this sleeve just because it's so small. I don't need a longer cord for that. But if you prefer to use a longer cord, that's totally fine. Before we start picking up stitches, we need to be sure that we're in the right place. So if you look at the pattern, it says that you want to be working on the right side of the work and you want to start at the armhole, okay? So if I started at the armhole and I went this way, that would be on the wrong side of the work, right? I'd be facing the wrong side of the work, so that is not correct. I want to start at the armhole and go this way. So I'm going around the front edge of the sleeve first. You can see this is the front of the collar. There's no button here. So this is the front. I'm going to be picking up from the front edge of the sleeve first. So I'm leaving my tie in place and I'm just going to start picking up these stitches. Now I know for this size that I have, I want to say 26, yes, I have 26 stitches on my cord here. So dividing by 2, that's 13. I'm going to go ahead and place 13 on each of my needles so that it's nicely centered. So I pick up 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you're getting just the stitch and not any of the strands below it. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whoops, 12, and 13. So that is one side. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my cord through, flip this over, and start working around the other side. And this is just to establish where my magic loop falls. So my magic loop's going to fall right here at the top of the shoulder. So here we go, another 13. Now, if you're using double points, obviously you're going to want to arrange them however works for you. It doesn't really matter, except that you're going to want to be able to do the decreases. So you may need to shift stuff around if you're not centered quite on the bottom. You need to be centered around the armhole. Okay. I mean around the armpit. You need to be centered around the armpit. Okay, so I've picked up all my stitches. Now I can remove this, which I think I just tied a bow. Let's see if it comes out. Yes, I just tied a bow, so it will come out. And then this is the magic. Whoop, all gone. I love that part. Okay, so I have picked up all 26 stitches and I counted them as I did it, so I know I have all my stitches before I remove that. And now it's time to go ahead and start the first row. Notice that we don't have our yarn attached yet. So we're not bound to where to start the row. We could start the row here if we wanted to, okay? Where we want to start the row is right in the middle of the underarm. Now for this size, I skipped 4 stitches. So I want to find those 4 stitches that I skipped under here. And they are, let's see, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. These are those 4 stitches that I skipped. So I'm going to be picking up eventually a stitch in every one of these. So my middle of my underarm's right here. And I can actually put a little marker in that if it helps me. Just for a second. The middle of my underarm is right here. Okay? So that is where I want my row to start. I want to start in the middle of the underarm because it'll hide the join if there's any wiggliness in your join, and also it just makes it nice and centered and easy for the decreases. So when I tell you to go to 3 stitches before the end and do a decrease, you're in the right spot. So it's very important that we start in the center there. So let's grab our yarn. So I have my yarn and I'm going to go ahead and pick up 3 stitches along this side, this half of the underarm. So I go in to that first stitch, and there's no tension here, so this is always the hardest one, and pick up a stitch, okay? Then I go into the next stitch, pick up another stitch, and this is why it helped to have a very low profile cast on, because you don't want a whole lot of bulk getting pushed to the back on the underarm there. And now you're thinking, well, wait, that's all the stitches I have. We had 4 stitches, 2 on each side. Yes, but there's also a big gap along the side where we skipped a row as well, where the row wasn't connected. So I'm going to find a spot, and usually I like to go right here and grab another stitch right there. So there's my 3 stitches, okay? And then I'm gonna go ahead and knit all the way around, whoops, all the way around until I get back to the center of the underarm again, or until I get back to the underarm again. So I'm going to knit all the stitches that are on my needle. And these were all the stitches that we had on that waist yarn before and that we just put back on our needle. Okay, I've come all the way back around and finished working into all these stitches that were on the waist yarn. And now I'm back to my underarm. Okay, and now I'm not quite done yet because I have to pick up 3 stitches on this side of the underarm too. So I'm grabbing my yarn again. And again, I'm going to pick one up in the middle of this row here, and I like to go right here where the 2 yarns kind of cross over each other so that I'm not pulling on one yarn and making it really distorted. So that's one, and then I've got 2 more stitches here. Here's one. And to identify it, I'm looking for that V shape. And remember, we were working in this direction before, so the V's are pointing this way. So I found it right there, and there's that little extra loop from the bind off. And I'm going to pick that, or for them cast on, I mean. I'm going to pick that up there. So there's my 3 stitches that I've picked up. So now I have all my stitches on my needles and they're centered around that center point in the underarm that we had marked before. I can go ahead and remove this marker. That was just a reference for the video. There we go. You don't actually need to place that marker. It was just to demonstrate for the video. But everything is centered right around that underarm portion. And when we start our rounds, we're going to be starting from the underarm, which is what we wanted. So we've done round 1. Let's move on. Now, if you remember, we picked up these 2 stitches from the 2 stitches that were bound off, and then we picked up this 1 extra stitch from the corner. So now we're going to get rid of this extra stitch. We're going to end up knitting or working these 2 stitches together. Okay, so first we knit the first one, so knit 1. And then on this side, I want to do a slip, slip, knit so that it leans that way. So I'm going to do a slip, slip, knit. And then I'm going to knit all the way around until there's 3 stitches left on the other side. Now, if you have a little bit of a hole here, don't worry too much. Sometimes that's just a tension issue and it'll either come out in blocking or you can actually tighten it up a little bit when you weave in the tails. So we're just going to knit all the way around until I get back to the other side of the underarm. So I've come around to my last 3 stitches, which were the underarm stitches, and this was that extra one that I picked up in the corner right here. So I'm going to get rid of this one by this time doing a knit 2 together. And then I knit that last stitch. So you can see the decreases are centered around the center of the underarm. And again, this is where we joined the yarn and it's in the corner there. So if it gets a little bit loose, you can tighten it up when you're weaving in your ends. But I think this will actually settle out once we block it and once I finish working. Right now I'm pulling on it a bit, so when I'm not pulling on it so much, I think that hole will go away. Now for the next few rows, however many rows it says in the pattern, I'm going to just knit all the way around. I believe for this size I have to get to row 6, and this was row 2 if you remember. So I have another 4 rows to go. I'm going to knit those rows and then come back. I finished row 6 and now I'm going to do a decrease row. And it's going to be the same as the decrease row that I did before. I'm going to knit 1 and do a slip, slip, knit to make a left leaning decrease. Then I'm going to knit all the way around to the last 3 stitches. Okay, I've made my way back to the last 3 stitches, and now I'm going to do a knit 2 together and then knit 1. And that's it for the decrease row. Let me show you the structure of the remaining rows on this other sleeve, which I finished. Here is that row 2 decrease, and then this was the row 7 decrease, and then after that there's a decrease every 6 rows. So it's 5 rows of just knit and then a decrease, 5 rows and then a decrease, 5 rows and then a decrease, and this is for the 6-month size. The decrease pattern may be different for some of the other sizes, but whatever it's listed in the pattern, it's going to be knit rows followed by a decrease row, several knit rows, a decrease row, until you get down to the number of stitches that you want at the cuff. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on this sleeve and then come back and show you how to do the cuff. So I finished the sleeve up to the cuff. I've gone ahead and cut the light green yarn, and now I grab my other color and I'm going to start the cuff. Before we do the ribbing, we're going to do exactly what we did at the hem. We're going to do 1 row of just knit, or 1 round of just knit with the new color. And what this does is it gives us a very clean color change, so we don't have any purl bumps that show of the old color mixed in with the new color, that kind of thing. So we just do, and this is still with the big needles because it's just stockinette, we just do 1 round of plain knit in the new color. I've finished 1 round of plain knit, and now it's time to switch to the smaller needles for the ribbing. So I'm going to go ahead and push these tails in here so they're out of my way. Go in. There we go. And then I'm going to grab my smaller set of needles, and I'm just going to start knitting with these, and eventually it will take all of the stitches off the old needles and onto the new ones. So start with a knit stitch, and I apologize for any banging of the needles. There's a lot of needles going on here. Okay, start with a knit stitch, and then just alternate knits and purls all the way around. So here is my larger set of needles, which I can now put aside because all of the stitches are on my smaller set of needles. I'm just going to continue working ribbing around and around until I've finished as many rows as it says to do in the pattern, and then I will come back and show you how to bind off. We're going to bind off the cuff the same way that we bound off the hem, and I've cut my tail to a length of at least 3 times around. It's probably 4 times. I like to cut my tails long just to be safe. So I'm going to start by going into this stitch as though to knit, taking it off of this needle and putting it onto this one, onto the back needle. Remember, this is just the setup for the first 2 stitches so that we can work into them again at the end. Then I'm going to go into this one as if to purl. This is the other knit stitch, right? So I'm going into this one as if to purl. And then I work the back ones. I go into this one as though to purl, just like that. Take it off and put it onto this needle so I can work into it later. And then I'm going to go into this one. Well, now I can pull this needle out of my way completely. And then I'm going to go into this stitch as though to knit, but from the back. So I come around to the front and then go into it as though to knit. Now I've done my 2 setup stitches, so we don't need that other needle anymore, and we're just going to continue with the knit, purl, purl, knit motion. So it is knit, insert your needle as though to knit, and throw the stitch off, and then purl into the next knit stitch here. Then you purl into the purl stitch, throw that stitch off, and then you bring your needle up between the 2 stitches and go into this next purl stitch as though to knit. And I'll show you that last one a little bit closer on the next one because that's the tricky one. You knit into this one, purl into this one, okay? Now this is a purl stitch. I'm going to purl into the purl stitch, throw it off my needle, and this is the tricky one. Do you see that space between the two stitches? We're going to come up between the two stitches here and go down into, and you can make it 2 separate steps if you want, but come up between the 2 stitches here and go down into this one as though to knit. Okay, one more time. Knit, purl, purl, knit. Now it looks like I'm at the end of my rope, but I'm not, because I have all these other stitches, and I can bring them up now. There we go. Turn the sleeve around a little bit. Turn the sleeve around. Sorry. It is very late at night as I'm recording this, so I'm a little bit loopy. But anyway, we're going to go into this one to knit, purl, okay, purl, and then come up between them and knit. Now remember, don't pull your stitches too tight. You want to keep the tension similar to the stitches around it. So knit, purl, purl, knit. Now I've gone all the way around and I've come to the last 2 pairs. So knit this one and purl this one. Now remember, this one was already worked into before, so when we get that clear on the edge of the needle, we can go ahead and toss it off. So then this one is the purl one, so purl, throw that one off. Whoops. Purl, throw that one off. You can also throw this one off because we've already worked into it twice. And then come into this one as though to knit and throw that one off as well, because now we've worked into that one twice. And there you have your finished cuff, and the end just needs to be woven in. Our knitting is done, and all that's left to do now is going to be to block it and then weave in all of these ends. Blocking it should fix the little bit of curling that you're going to be seeing going on at the points where the ribbing meets the stockinette, like at the hem and at the collar. That should settle down with blocking, and once you put it on the baby, you're not going to see that at all. So that is the Simply Sweet Raglan baby sweater. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends, or leave me a comment. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great videos. Thanks for watching!